From the center of the universe and the home of your Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant, joined once again by JB as we get set for the Argos to start the 2023 regular season. Listeners, I have a favor to ask, and I so rarely ask favors of you, but this is an important one. Support products and businesses that support the CFL, your local team, and CFL content that you love. So if you enjoy listening to our podcast, X's and Argos, you like reading JB's report cards, all of our content, you need to buy some beer, buy it from Something in the Water Brewing. You got to get your hair cut, go to the business barbershop and spa. You want to sign your kids up to play Rise flag football, that's what you want to go and do. And so all of our sponsor information, you can find it all on xsandargos.com. Please support our sponsors because they make our podcast possible. JB, it's great to have you back this week. I was all on my own last week, rambling like you wouldn't believe. You were without a voice.
Yeah, I'm feeling much better than I was last week, and I'm ready to get it going.
Good, because I couldn't even take a drink last week. I was worried about stopping talking, so I was just completely parched by the end of the evening. And we got a huge show today. We've got, in our news and notes section, Jamal Peters returns to the Argos. Enoch and the 2022 Argos were inducted into the Toronto Sport Hall of Honor. The Grey Cup rings were revealed. AJ Ouellette was wrestling, which is amazing. And we've got some comments directly from AJ on that, which is pretty cool too. And then we've got a game preview, the opener, the Argos home opener, the banner unfurling, the rivalry, Hamilton Tiger Cats. So we'll get that set. And we've got OCDC brought to you by the Business Barbershop and Spa. We've got One Thing, predictions, Put Me Down for 20, and CFL Picks, all that and more coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. JB, news and notes. Jamal Peters returns. Initial reaction, like this is one of the biggest things to happen to them, right?
Huge, absolutely. To add him to a position that needed some support, both with injury and guys who have left, to roll him back into that squad is incredible. I don't think it should be understated. I mean, it absolutely is adding a potential all-star to the secondary. I'm sure the Argos are over the moon. I'm over the moon.
Yeah, it's a massive signing because he's in the conversation for their best defensive player last year. I don't think he was. I think that was Wynton McManus, but he's in that conversation. We felt really good about this defense coming in, and like you said, like the only real question mark was we weren't sure about the secondary, especially with Robert Priester getting banged up, to get to bring in a guy who may have been one of your best defensive players, an all-star from last year, the league's interception leader, and you're just plugging him in to the one spot where they really needed a guy. It's perfect for the Argos. And do you think it's possible for him to play this week? Is he going to plug and play and be out there Sunday?
I would, sure, of course. I don't think they've made any radical changes to the playbook. I would bet he absolutely starts on Sunday.
And I think he should be in fantastic shape. He's coming off OTAs for the Atlanta Falcons. He knows the system. He knows Coach Mace. He's familiar with everybody that's on the field next to him. So yeah, I absolutely expect him to be out there Sunday, and that will be a huge boost. JB, I've got a massive opportunity for our listeners. We've been waiting for this for a while. Something in the Water Brewing, our title sponsor, is offering you, the X's and Argos listeners, something that nobody else can get. We've been talking about Longboat, the pale ale that was inspired by Darius Bladek, the beer that was created specifically for Toronto Argonauts fans. It's ready, and it's ready just for you. Here's why and how. So Friday night, they are putting it on their secret tap, and the only people in the entire world, other than the people that work there, that know about the secret tap of Longboat Pale Ale is anyone listening to X's and Argos. So I'm going to try and get down there at some point on Friday night, grab a pint of Longboat. And throughout the weekend, too, no one except X's and Argos listeners are going to know about that secret tap. All you got to do is just go in and order Longboat. And you can mention that you heard it on the podcast, but you don't even need to because they'll know because it's not advertised anywhere. It's not on their menus. It's nowhere. It's just here on this podcast. So, JB, you're going to go down there with me on Sunday. We'll go pregame, something in the water.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's perfect, right? Because it's steps from BMO Field, steps from Lamport Stadium. We'll drop by there, maybe grab some food, maybe grab a quick drink. Say hi to you if you're there, of course. Drop in, say hello to us, and then we'll make our way to the game and see Argos Ticats. So it is a perfect plan for this weekend. Get yourself some Longboat Pale Ale. You definitely won't regret it. We've been waiting for this one for a long time. So, JB, Enoch and the 2022 Argos were inducted to the Toronto Sport Hall of Honor. I think this was such a nice thing to be able to do. The Grey Cup team, it wasn't a great year in Toronto sports, and to be reminded that, hey, you know what? There is one team that is winning, that has been winning, and it is carrying the banner for everyone else. And so it was nice to see the Grey Cup winning Argos honored, and nice to see Enoch Mwamba, of all people, especially, being a guy that's, that grew up in Mississauga, not too far from Toronto, to be inducted to the Toronto Sport Hall of Honor was pretty cool. The other big announcement this week was the Grey Cup ring unveiling. I don't know how to word that.
Yeah, I would say unveiling.
And so first we saw actually it was a pretty cool video. They've got so much stuff. If you go to the Argos Twitter account, I think is the best place to find like all of it together. You can find stuff on argonauts.ca as well. But on their Twitter account, you can go from like one thing to the next. There's a great video with a sort of unveiling made by Baron Rings, who makes the rings. But then they also have a really handy guide that shows you what everything means. And from having like designed a few championship rings, I know the players don't always know every detail and what everything stands for, but nothing's by accident. Every diamond, every curve, every word that is on the ring has a meaning. And then even underneath the rings, for all championship rings, it's pretty customary now to write a little slogan or perhaps something of importance on the underside. And, just for example, on the shank of the ring for the Argos ring, it says 1-0. And that was basically their mentality as they got into crunch time at the end of the season, was to go 1-0 every week. And so that's on the ring. So yeah, again, nothing's by accident. It's a really cool ring. And we've talked about this enough already, but it's worth reminding you, the first 10,000 fans that get into BMO Field on Sunday are going to get a replica of one of these rings. And even the replica rings look outstanding. So that's a pretty nice thing.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I know the Raptors did something similar with their home opener after they won the championship. And I liked it as kind of an MLSE vibe. And I think it's a really fun take-home gift. Sometimes, the things, a hat or whatever, you kind of throw in the corner of your closet, but I think having that ring is a really kind of fun way of celebrating the opening of the season. I'm all for it.
It's a really cool giveaway. So be in those first 10,000 to get there, to make sure you pick up your ring. AJ Ouellette wrestling. So before we get into the Greektown wrestling experience that AJ was a part of, JB, is there anybody that was more likely to have been in a wrestling match on the Toronto Argonauts than AJ Ouellette?
No, I would have him definitely number one.
It's not even close.
I wish he'd adopted Juggernaut as his wrestling name, but I think for sure, probably Oakman as a heel. I think he lends himself as to the bad guy. I think he could definitely be an imposing figure. I would pay to see Oakman wrestle Ouellette.
That would be something. The only other guy I could think of, like
Mwamba
Enoch, would be
with Mwamba as referee.
Mwamba's referee. Now Enoch would be a great face, like sort of the baby face versus heel from the wrestling verbiage. I don't even know if they still use that terminology or not. I haven't really followed wrestling, but yeah, seeing that video come up on social media of AJ Ouellette wrestling. And so I reached out and got a bit of backstory on this. I can tell you a little bit about it. So it was something that he was trying to do last year. That was something that they just couldn't quite get their schedule to work out. Jock Sampson, who he was kind of representing, he was in Jock's corner for this match. So Jock is from the Plains or Athens, Ohio, where AJ went to school. And so, yeah, they'd hooked up about this idea, and they were going to try and do something last year. Didn't work out. Finally, the timing did. And so the initial plan was for him just to be in the corner and just kind of be representing there, maybe waving at fans, so maybe signing some autographs. I don't know. I don't really know how the indie wrestling scene works. But AJ gets there and decides, we got to do something more than that. And if you haven't seen the video, man, it's spectacular. So AJ, near the end of the match, it's Jock Sampson and Trent Gibson. AJ throws on his Argos helmet and gets in the ring and spears Trent Gibson to the ground, then takes off his Grey Cup ring, gives it to Jock, and Jock, as his finishing move, punches Trent in the face with the Grey Cup ring, and of course pins him for the 1, 2, 3. But yeah, it was epic, and AJ is every bit the wrestler that he would have been in that scenario. And I think it's pretty cool that he also mentioned that this is, I don't know how serious he is on this, but I think kind of that once he's done with his long and successful CFL career, maybe wrestling would be something that he would look into. And we know other CFL players have gone on to do that. I would love to see AJ in the wrestling ring once this is all done. He's the perfect guy for it.
Yeah, he, it definitely, it did not seem out of character. I think it's pretty funny. He's definitely somebody who doesn't take himself overly seriously, despite his focus on football. It's great to see personality. I mean, we've talked about this. This is a team that is not just a bunch of boring Maple Leafs. This is a team that has all kinds of interesting, charismatic people, and more they can get that out there to people, I think the better, because they're definitely the most interesting MLS team.
Yeah, and AJ, like we know, we talked about his emotion too, and just how he wears it on his sleeve. You remember the first time that we talked to AJ Ouellette in post game, where we were sitting there going through the different players that came out to talk to us, and then we sort of look over, and AJ's over there, sort of like William Shatner doing Rocket Man in this sort of haze on the side of the room, and he was so, because he'd fumbled in that game, and I think they lost the game, and I think it was a tight one, as I recall. And he wore everything of that entire game emotionally with him. And you could tell the passion, the intensity that he had, and his honesty and his answers were just so. It's just not what you get typically from professional athletes. They block that away, and you get the same cliched answers. And that's not what you get with the Argos. It's certainly not what you get with AJ Ouellette. So yeah, I love the personality in this locker room. All right, JB. It's time to tee up the game. The Argos opener, Ticats v. Toronto Argonauts. This one's going to be pretty cool. If you can get down there, there's still tickets available. It's going to be pretty busy because of all the things going on. First of all, you got Ticats fans in town. Second of all, there's going to be a ton of Argos fans there because of the fact that this is the Grey Cup winning team. This is the banner reveal. This is the banner unfurling, ring reveal, whatever we decided on, all that other stuff. It's going to be a pretty electric atmosphere, and it's Father's Day to go along with all that. So yeah, a lot of reason to get out for the game. The other one that's interesting, and I think this is something that we're maybe going to talk about when we get to predictions and OCDC and the other segments, but this is huge for Hamilton because we know how slowly they started last year and how that came back to haunt them. They're 0-1. They got blown out in the first half against Winnipeg, crawled back, got a couple lucky bounces, but didn't look great. If they drop this game to the Argos and go 0-2, it's going to have people panicking a little bit, even though it's so early. It's way too early to panic, but people will, and people are going to start talking. And it's just not easy as a player when that's all you hear, and every question you get is about the slow start and what's wrong and why isn't the team gelling, why aren't they coming together. This is a massive game for the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah, it lets Toronto be in the same position they were last year, which is having the rest of the division kind of dig a hole at the beginning. I'm all for it. I think it makes it huge. Hamilton is probably, in my opinion, their competitor for the division lead. If you can drop Hamilton to 0-2, that's a terrific step. I really think it it can have a season changing impact to be able to kind of put Hamilton behind the eight ball, especially, you have a new quarterback and what's it going to be? Is this going to work? Last year wasn't that successful. The Grey Cup is coming. The more they lose at the beginning, the more pressure that's going to be on them. That only works out for the Argos.
It's time for OCDC. OCDC is brought to you by the Business Barbershop and Spa. The Business Barbershop and Spa invites you to experience Etobicoke's premier licensed men's grooming lounge for hair, face, and body care. They're celebrating 10 years in the Kingsway, and the first 50 clients who book a service will be entered into a draw to win a $200 gift card. All you got to do to be part of that gift card draw is mention Argos, all about the business, when you book your service. So you need a haircut, call them up, the Business Barbershop and Spa. They're in the Kingsway area. It's super convenient. There's a ton of parking available around there. It's right on the subway line. Don't forget to mention Argos, all about the business, to be entered for that $200 gift card draw. All right, JB, for new listeners, OCDC is a segment. We've been doing it for a long time now. JB's got most of his experience coaching on the defensive side of the ball. Most of mine is on the offensive side of the ball. So we decided we would look at every matchup and plan an offensive plan for both the home and away team, and then do the same for the defensive side of the ball. So I'll start things off first. We will start out with the visiting Hamilton Tiger Cats, where we will be the coordinator for both of those teams. I'll start out on offense. So my plan offensively for the Hamilton Tiger Cats is pretty simple. They've got to take short passes and just live and die with that. So this is the concern for Hamilton coming into this game. Their offensive line, I expect to be pretty banged up. We don't have injury reports as of yet because they play on Sunday. Injury information hasn't started coming out yet. I think their O-line is in a pretty bad way, just judging by the last game and seeing, players that look like they were laboring a little bit or just didn't make it through the game outright. I think there's going to be some trouble on the offensive side of the ball. We know Toronto's defensive front, their front six, is just sick. And there's not going to be a lot of running lanes. There's definitely not going to be a lot of time to drop back and pass. And we know that traditionally Coach Mace employs more of an umbrella style defense, plays a lot of cover four. And so the passes Toronto's going to give you, it's that a little bit of that bend but don't break style. They'll give you the stuff underneath. And they're banking on the fact that you can't go all the way down the field like that. You're going to get frustrated. You'll suddenly take a chance, and Jamal Peters or Deshaun Amos, someone's going to pick that ball off deep downfield, maybe a Darius Pickett. And that's what they're banking on. And it almost always works because you get frustrated. The key to Hamilton succeeding in this game is they just can't get frustrated by that. That's their ticket to win. They have to just accept that they can march down the field 6, 7, 8 yards at a time, completing these short hook routes against the zone you're almost certainly going to see. Toronto's not going to throw a ton of man coverage at you, and so run your short floods, run your short bunch concepts, take the flat routes. And Bo is the right quarterback for that. He's patient, he's smart, and the only time you go over top at all for anything is if the Argos DBs start to show frustration, if they start to get antsy at the fact that you're totally happy completing those short passes. But that's, to me, the only offensive game plan for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I just don't see a lot running the ball. I don't really see much point running the ball. As much as I like Butler, I like some of the things that Hamilton can do offensively. I just don't think this is the matchup for it. Take the short passes. JB, where are you going for Hamilton's defensive plan?
Yeah, I don't envy Hamilton in terms of trying to figure out how to stop Toronto. I guess you would have to go with a kind of. I don't think there's anything to be learned from the exhibition game. Certainly, I think you'd have to go with a kind of generic plan you would have against a quarterback who doesn't have a lot of experience. In that you definitely want to send a lot of heat. You want to give them a lot of different looks in the secondary, probably more moving parts than you normally would have, because I think you're really looking to see how fast is this quarterback reading. My guess would be, as any quarterback doesn't have a lot of experience, they're probably one read, maybe two. So if you can make that first read confusing, you can really get a young quarterback rattled. Yeah, so like if I'm trying to stop Chad Kelly, I'm definitely want that first look to be as confusing as possible, and I definitely am bringing more heat than I normally would. And until he can show me he can handle the heat, then I would probably turn it down. But until that point, that's probably how I come out in that first quarter is bringing extra people, bringing them from different directions. How good is he at picking up the blitzer? How good is he at identifying overloads? Or how much does he hand that off to the center? I'm curious about all that stuff, but I think a kind of generic young quarterback, even though Kelly's not young, he is young in CFL experience, and the Hamilton DC and coaching staff are not young. They are very experienced. So I am guessing he is going to see potentially some things that he is not expecting in terms of coverage. And I believe Mr. Chris Edwards will be fired out of a cannon. And I would identify where he is on almost every snap, because I think he's going to be coming a lot early.
I think he might too. I've got a plan for him, and we'll deal with that in a minute. But you know what your plan sounds like to me, which I think is a really good plan. Because Hamilton is going to be playing Toronto a number of times this season, as they always do, I feel like you know that scene in Jurassic Park where it's revealed that the Raptors systematically are testing the barriers of their confinement unit, and because they're intelligently trying to find a weakness. I feel like what you're saying is going to be a little bit of that with Chad Kelly. There's just not a book on him, right? And so send different things, try different things out, and see if you can find out there's something. Hey, hang on, he didn't look so comfortable when we did this.
Yeah, I would make that first quarter incredibly uncomfortable. You absolutely do not want to give him easy completions, checkdowns. I'm playing, tight on the checkdowns. And essentially force him to earn the respect. If he can move to his second look, and if he can throw with that heat, then you have to go into a different defense. But I certainly would not give him that respect until he earns it.
I'm really excited about seeing Chad Kelly. I know that's sort of off segment, but I think this feels like there's a Christmas morning element to this, where the Argos have all these new toys, and we were sort of like shaking boxes a little bit. That's what preseason was, and we kind of have an idea. But all the new ads, not just Chad Kelly, but the new ads of like Arimolade and Pickett and Williams, and then of course Jamal Peters back too. There's some excitement there, but I really am interested in seeing Chad Kelly in this game. I think that's going to be. I think it'll be pretty telling. I think we'll get a lot out of his first performance, even though I don't typically put a lot of stock in a first game. I think there's some interesting stuff we're going to see. Let's switch to the good guys, JB. So my offensive plan for Toronto, I kind of got two plans here, and similar to the plan for Hamilton, I don't think Toronto should actually run a ton. I'm not a huge fan of running the ball anyway in the CFL, but I just don't feel like this is the team you're going to have a ton of success running against. I actually really like Hamilton's front. I really like Jameer Thurman. He was one of my favorite middle linebackers last year in Calgary. And you could see why in that game with Winnipeg last week. I love them as a run-stopping unit, even though they had their struggles at times against Winnipeg. So I think you're, first of all, looking for the air. And I think what I want to target is the boundary side. So you got Javian Elliott, who was playing corner last week, Kenneth George Jr. I don't know. So Kenneth George Jr. was in at the halfback spot, and you had Tunde Adeleke at safety, but I'm not sure if Adeleke is going to be good to go or not. He got banged up in that game, and Katsantonis came in. And I know that the Argos have tried to pick on Katsantonis before when Adeleke has been out, and he's actually played really well. But the truth of the matter is Katsantonis is not as good as Adeleke. I think Adeleke is one of the top 2 safeties in the league. And so if he doesn't play, that has to be an area of focus. And so if we're just looking to pick on safety, then I want to see high lows on the safety. That's one of the most difficult things to defend, make him make decisions. But I think bigger picture, if you've got Kenneth George Jr. and you've got Javian Elliott over to the boundary side and Katsantonis, all 3 together, that's something you have to exploit, not because they're not good. First of all, like Javian Elliott may turn into an excellent CFL corner. I think he probably will. Kenneth George I like too, but between the 2 of them, I think they've got 2 years experience and really not much in the way of gameplay. And they just don't have time together. One of them's a rookie, one of them's with Calgary, one of them's been in Hamilton backing up. Put those guys in positions where they have to communicate with each other. So routes that travel through zones, you're going to have to run some deep drops. You're going to have to drop Kelly deep. You're going to have to really rely on protection. I don't mind bringing a back in to help with that, but something to buy Kelly time so that you can have receivers traveling from outside in, from inside out, and forcing George, Elliott, Katsantonis, or Adeleke to communicate and be efficient in their communication. I think that's where there's going to be breakdowns. The second part of my plan is Chris Edwards. We know how good Chris Edwards is, but I think we got to use that if we're Toronto to our advantage. So Chris Edwards, is going to be going for the ball. He's going to be going for sacks, and I think he can be baited on double moves. Anytime you can get Hamilton in man coverage, and they'll show cover 1. They'll quite comfortably run that with Edwards out on whoever he matches up with, because we know Edwards can run with pretty much anyone. That's where you trigger your double move, and I guarantee it, he's going to cut in for that ball. He's going to try and undercut that route. You turn it up into a wheel or a hitch and go, whatever it is. Try and isolate Edwards and man. Go for that double move. Go for that home run. You've only got one shot at it. That's it. But I think it's there to be had because he is going to be absolutely fired up. JB, what's your Argos defensive plan?
Winnipeg did not look that great against Winnipeg, which will happen when you play Winnipeg. So it's hard to tell. Butler actually ran really well. They just didn't, because they got down so big so early. They didn't use him a ton, but he actually ran really well for them. So I think that I have to concentrate on stopping Butler. I think that he is a problem. You can't let Butler get going. If they can get the play action game going and they can earn yards on the ground, I think now you're in trouble. I'm fine with letting Levi try and beat us. He didn't show me anything that didn't make me think that he was coming on to the end. You're looking for Tim White. He clearly likes throwing to White. I think you're looking to double White, and you're looking to take away the Butler run, and after that, you're in pretty good shape. I think from a Hamilton perspective, they don't have a ton of playmakers. I'm circling those 2 names, and if they have a third player that beats us, then I'll tip my hat. But I'm not going to let those 2 players beat us, and then we'll roll from there.
Yeah, I wonder if Tim White is even going to be 100%. Like, he looked a little worse for wear at the end, so that'll be interesting to monitor throughout the week. That Hamilton offense may have that injury report when they first. It'll be like Thursday and Friday's injury report that we're really interested in. But
and I think there are picks there to have off Bo Levi. I'm not necessarily going to blitz him a lot. He's a veteran guy. He's seen a lot of looks. But I'm definitely looking to try and move him off his spot, get him rolling out, getting him moving on the run. His arm is not a cannon. I think that if you get him on the move, there are picks to be had when he is trying to make a play, because he does look to make plays downfield, and I think that's where you can get a defensive backfield that's looking for. It's not the defensive backfield we had last year, but I think you're looking for picks, and I'd love to see, is this the game, you and I have talked about, is this Argo defense going to be the bend don't break model, or is this going to be the ferocious 8? And I really hope it's the ferocious 8. I really hope we're getting linebacker blitzes and we're getting a lot more games up front, because I think they have the personnel to do it this year. So that's certainly a hope for me that we see a very different Argo defense than maybe Hamilton is ready for.
I'm wondering if Toronto's going to be able to bully on the inside the way Winnipeg did, because you notice like how uncomfortable Bo Levi Mitchell looked last week when Winnipeg was able to sort of take away that shelf. And there was nowhere for him to step up, like, because he's totally comfortable being a veteran quarterback. He's totally comfortable.
You've got to move out of that. You can't let him sit in that pocket. He'll nickel and dime you to death.
Yeah, and guys flying around the edge don't bother him because he just like steps up casually and makes a throw. But when they were right on his doorstep, that was something that made him look a little bit skittish isn't really the right word. He never really looked skittish, but he didn't look nearly as comfortable as when guys are flying around the end and he had room.
Identify Edwards. Never mind the mic. Identify Edwards. If he is in the box, he is coming. Chad Kelly, look out for him.
Yeah, I think Edwards is going to have the game of his life, but that's why you can exploit that.
He won't have the game though. He's going to have a half. I think you just have to watch out for him in the first half.
It's like when he decides to use his turbo button sort of thing.
Yeah, he usually doesn't have like a full game, but that first half, identify him and move your protection accordingly.
Let's do one thing. My one thing for this week is, again, I feel like I'm cheating on one thing this year a lot, and we haven't even played a regular season game, but this is, again, sort of several things together. My one thing is I want Chad Kelly to be 65% or better for pass completions. I know that's a lot to ask. Not? It's a lot to ask, but like I'm not saying 80. It's certainly possible. But I think that's a big thing for him. I want some consistency. I just don't want to see him go for home run after home run. I know that his style is a little bit more hot and cold, and he's probably not going to end up with that completion number at the end of the season. Actually, it might be. I said that it might be there because he's got such good control, but he does throw it into tight windows, and that's where you see your incompletions, where it's just they're just not balls that are as high percentage as some guys will throw. There's a greater reward to it, but more risk to it as well. So I want to see from this game a little bit of consistency from Chad Kelly. I want to see him string 4 or 5 completions in a row. And at the end of the night, I think if Chad's at 65% completion, I think the Argos win the game. What's your one thing?
Well, I'm a big fan of nicknames, and there are not many cities in the world that can have a sack exchange. And I would love to see Toronto come out and have 4 sacks with an aggressive front 8 and grab the mantle of the Toronto sack exchange.
So the sack exchange would be the nickname of like the Toronto front 6?
Yes. Or even more than 6 if they roll a couple more people into it.
All right, sounds good. The sack exchange. All right.
Yep. There's really only 2 cities in North America that can have it. So I really would love to see it. I think we have the personnel to do it that we didn't last year. I don't know if it's ready to be unveiled or not, or even if the defensive guys have that in their head, but I sure hope they do.
For any new listeners, JB loves nicknames. We've got Sean Oakman is CN Power. AJ Ouellette is Juggernaut. Are there any others that I'm missing?
That's it currently. You got to earn it. I don't just give them out randomly, but I think when the guys are flashing, I do like to shut them out.
Let's do predictions. JB, how is this one going to end?
I like Toronto to win. Hamilton coming back from a really tough physical game in Winnipeg on the road. Toronto's at home, rested. Home opener. You got the rings being handed out. You got the flags. Toronto is relatively healthy coming out of camp. I like Toronto 35, Hamilton 24.
I think this is going to go the other way. And I thought this from the moment I saw the schedule come out. And I think it even more now. And I want to be clear on why I think the Hamilton Tiger Cats are going to win this game. Toronto is the better team. I don't think there's any question about that. In my mind, Toronto is a much better football team than the Hamilton Tiger Cats. At the end of the day, Toronto will be there at the top of the East. But there are things that can go wrong in any individual game. And I think this is one of them. This is the perfect recipe for disaster. And again, from a coaching standpoint, I have lived through this. I have gone into season opening games where we were being celebrated or highly touted or ranked high in the nation's rankings or whatever it was, and lost or got our doors blown off, whatever the case, because there's no pressure on the other guys in that sense. There's just anger and building frustration. And Hamilton's a good football team. I just want you to go into the heads of the Hamilton Tiger Cats for a minute. They were just shellacked in Winnipeg last week. They haven't won a Grey Cup since '99. They're hosting it again this year. They're going to travel to play their hated rivals. And they've got Chris Edwards, Jagarrett Davis, plus 10,000 screaming Hamiltonians or however many make the trip down the QEW. And they're going to sit there in the beginning of the game and watch Toronto unfurl their Grey Cup banner. Everyone in the stadium is going to be showing off their shiny Grey Cup rings, which the Hamilton players don't have, Chris Edwards, Jagarrett Davis aside. And all of that's going to be going on. It's going to be Toronto's night, and there is going to be a rage boiling inside of Hamilton. Plus, add to that, they're desperate. They need to win this game. I talked about that earlier, about how important this game is in the game preview we did. They need this. Toronto doesn't need this right now. It would be nice. It'd be great. But Hamilton needs this. And Toronto's the better team. Hamilton's desperate plus angry equals an upset victory. So I have Hamilton winning this one 28-25. Again, when I look at it on paper, Toronto should win. In every way you look at it, Toronto should win this game. But the emotions that are involved make me think it's going to go Hamilton's way. All right, JB, it is time for Put Me Down for 20. And before we get into this segment, I want to remind listeners that while gambling can be a fun way to enhance your sports viewing experience, it's important to do so responsibly. Set a budget, never bet more than you'd be happy to lose, an amount that you'd view as the cost of entertainment. And if you or anyone you know develop a problem with gambling, you can call the Ontario Problem Gambling Helpline. It's 1-888-230-3505. JB, I missed having you for this one last week because this is a new segment for us, and I'll explain to listeners. But we got your bets in last week, and you had a winning week, as did I. So how this is going to work every week is JB and I have 20 units to bet, and I'm going to expand on units in just a moment. Maybe we can come to a consensus on this, but we have 20 units to bet every week. One of those bets must be Argos related, unless they're not playing. And the other bet has to be another CFL bet somewhere around the league. And we can divide it however we see fit. And so last week, I had 10 units on Toronto to win the Grey Cup at plus 650. So that's a futures bet. Obviously, that won't be decided for a while. And my other bet was on the BC Lions to beat Calgary outright at plus 145, and that was a winner. And so coming into this week, I still had that one bet on the books, and I had 204.5 units. JB, you put your futures bet on Chad Kelly with the most passing yards at the end of the season. I loved that bet at plus 850. I think those are great odds. I don't know if, he's not the favorite to do it, obviously, not in my mind, not in the sportsbook's mind, but at those odds, plus 850 is pretty solid. So yeah, I think that's a cool bet.
I just think, that doesn't, he may throw interceptions, but he is going to throw the ball down the field. And I don't really feel like there's anybody in the CFL who is going to put up crazy numbers. There's a lot of old names kicking around the league. So, I think we have the hot young quarterback, so let's go for it.
And then your other bet was a winner. You had, this was an obscure one. You had Winnipeg Hamilton scoring more points in the second half than the first half. That's such a weird, gambler's bet, but it was a winner.
It was a winner indeed.
That second half was electric in Winnipeg.
I would have liked a little more juice on it, but that's all right.
So you're staying at 201 units, and we both got a bit of we both have a play still out there. So let's go into what we do this week. But before I do, Will from the Argos Fancast, and if you don't listen to the Argos Fancast, you've got to listen to it. Add that to your podcast repertoire. Between X's and Argos Fancast, we have you covered in every possible way. I think we complement each other's shows beautifully. So please do give them a listen. But Will was saying he wanted something more creative than units. And suggested sandwiches, because you and I have talked about how we used to bet sandwiches when we first.
I had forgotten we've been on the air, so to speak, so long. I had forgotten that we had referenced that long ago tradition.
We did, but that's what we used to do. We'd make a wager, we'd bet a Subway sandwich on things, obscure stuff. Or you suggested golden fleeces.
Yes, my mythological bent. I still vote for golden fleeces, but I'm fine with units. I would characterize my interest in this debate as low.
Yeah, as per the usual, I'm more intrigued by this than you. All right, well, we'll stick with units for now. Maybe we change it up to sandwiches. I don't like golden fleeces. There's only one golden fleece. You can't bet like 20 golden fleeces on something.
Who says we can?
Well, all right, let's get to it. So I'll go through my bets first, and then you go through yours. So my Argos bet, and I'm going to go heavier on this Argos bet. Andrew Harris under 58.5 rushing yards, and this is at minus 110. This is what I like about this bet. It's not that I don't think Andrew Harris is going to have a good game. 58.5 rushing yards when you're dividing the ball is a lot. And I think the carries are going to be divided. I think the Argos backfield is pretty healthy right now. I think you're going to see a bunch of AJ Ouellette. I think you're going to see some Adebaboye, some Leak. And I just don't think Harris is going to have a ton of carries at the end of the day. So 58.5 yards, I think, is high. So I'm going to put 15 of my 20 units on that one. And with the other 5 units, I've got an exciting parlay going on here. For a potential big score, I'm putting 5 units on Winnipeg minus 5.5 and Edmonton to win outright. So that will pay off pretty handily if that comes true, if Edmonton can beat the BC Lions, which I think they're 7.5 point dogs. So that seems pretty unlikely, but that's my pairing for this week. Where are you going for your 20 units?
Although I appreciate the sharp value of betting the under, I will never have an under bet suggested. I hate betting the under of anything. I am not going to support Edmonton. They can go to hell after that the 3 downs on the goal line last week. Just disgusting demonstration of loser football. I cannot support them at all. So, all that aside, my Toronto bet, I am going to go with the Argonauts to win between 1 and 6 points at plus 340. I like the Argos to win just under a touchdown. And my other one is same kind of vibe. I'm going to cheer for the Red Blacks. I think the Red Blacks are going to win at home between 1 and 6 points, and they're at 450 over Calgary. I don't think Calgary is anything special, and now they're down a running back. I did think about the Saskatchewan play because for some reason they decided to get their starting quarterback hurt in the final play of the game. I'm not totally sure what they were thinking there. But I'm going to go with Ottawa and Toronto both to win between 1 and 6 points.
When I saw that play, and those are 10 units each, right? You're splitting
10 units each.
Okay. Yeah, when I saw that Saskatchewan play, because I saw it developing. So they cut to a sideline shot. There was time was going to be whistled in. They cut to a sideline shot, and I could see, I don't remember if it was Kelly Jeffrey, the OC. So I think it was Kelly Jeffrey, and he was motioning, sort of miming like what was going to happen, that you're going to like throw the ball, essentially trying to burn clock. That's what that play was, right? So it's a 3rd down scenario. They were up by 4 at the time. I kick a field goal there to go up by 7.
Yeah.
But the play was what they wanted to do, what the coaching staff and Kelly Jeffrey, I guess, wanted to do on that play is burn clock. That's the only thing that makes any sense. They thought they could get the clock to read 0 at the end. Because if you couldn't get the clocks to read 0 at the end, there's no point in doing any of that, because 5 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, it doesn't matter. They're all the same thing at that stage of the game. So it means you're calling a play to try and burn time. You can't burn 8 seconds.
That's a lot of time to burn.
No, you can't. It's just there's not enough time to burn that on a play where you know that the other team's sending heat. Right. It just didn't make sense. And so when I saw him miming this, I looked at the play clock and I'm doing the math. Like, they're going to snap the ball with 8 seconds left. They're going to have to roll him out, which is putting him in harm's way. You know Edmonton's going to send heat, because you do at that stage of the game. You have to. That's all you got left. And there wasn't enough yardage on the field. They were too close to the end zone for this to be the furthest pass you could ever possibly throw. Throw like a 70-yard bomb or whatever. That's just not enough to burn that clock. And so I knew there was going to be, especially on the road, you're not even dealing with a home clock operator either.
And he took a huge shot. And I mean, my concern beyond like him having a lacerated kidney, because he like flew through the air and then landed on his kidney hip, is I really hope it's not a hip injury, because that can be season ending and career ending.
It looked brutal. It looked like he got hit by a train. He got thrown through the air and landed like on his spine.
So like if he has a hip injury, that could be it. Those are seemingly like I've seen players where like you're like, okay, that's not that bad, and then that's it. They're done, because they just can't recover from the injured hip. It's one of those areas that you got to be really careful about injuring, because you can, if it's subluxed, he might be subluxed out of a whole season.
Yeah, and we're hoping not. They've been pretty coy about it so far in comments to the media today. I guess Mason
that's
Fine,
not a great sign either.
No, well, Mason Fine was taking snaps, and they sort of, I guess, kind of shrug things off and like, no, it'll be okay. But until I see him taking snaps, and I guess he was throwing and stuff, but
he was writhing on the ground in pain.
It didn't look good. And so until we see him out there, not just out there playing, but out there and playing the way he can play, like actually moving around a little bit.
I agree. It was the whole final 2 minutes of that game made me bonkers.
Well, we'll know this week. And maybe this is a perfect transition for us to get into this week's picks. All right, JB, I went 3-1 last week. You were 2-2 this week.
Outrageous. Edmonton didn't win that game. That's all I'm going to say. Once again, my picks are not representative of the games that happened.
Yeah, this was what you said last year every week when you were 1-3 and I was 3-1.
Those are the 3 worst goal rushes I've ever seen. It looked like they had never practiced it. They brought in a quarterback who clearly is not interested in being a short yardage cornerback.
He is, though. He's good at it, typically.
Maybe you read his diary. Not on anything he did.
No, but we saw him do this last year, and actually have some success, but it was bad.
He's like, lets the line run, then he runs, and then they tried to run it outside. Ugh.
The last play was bad, and there also may have been an offside on that last play too. But
relive it.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to go first?
It was not good. Yeah, let's go through our picks. So, Calgary at Ottawa. I have honors. I'm going to take Calgary. I think both teams were a little disappointing last week. I think Calgary's issues are easier to fix. They had drop balls and just weird miscues that you don't see Calgary make, and I think those are pretty easy to remedy. Ottawa's problems were that they didn't have good quarterback play, and that is not as easy a fix. So I think Calgary wins this one.
Yeah. That's probably the smart bet. I'm going to go Ottawa at home. I think they can do it at home. I didn't see much in Calgary, but you're right. That was the Arbuckle show, and I don't think that's going to get it done. But I am still going to pull for Ottawa at home.
Winnipeg at Saskatchewan. People are panicking about ticket sales in Saskatchewan. It's been a long time since we've heard that as a problem, but I know it's been going kind of viral this week. People looking at ticket sales and how many are available for what should be one of the biggest games of the year for Saskatchewan. But I think Saskatchewan's in a bad place right now. I think they were pretty lucky to beat Edmonton last week. I think Winnipeg is a much better team. I don't think Winnipeg is going to sleep on a 1-0 Saskatchewan Roughriders team. I think they're going to come in and blow the doors off Saskatchewan. I think it's going to be over quick. So I've got Winnipeg.
Oh, wow. I went back and forth on that with the quarterback issue in Saskatchewan. I'm going to go Winnipeg too. On the road, going into Saskatchewan's not easy, but Edmonton has improved, but Saskatchewan still should have outclassed them, and they didn't. I like Winnipeg on the road.
Edmonton at BC. This is my upset play of the week. I think the Edmonton Elks are going to beat the BC Lions this week. And my rationale for it, again, is a little bit of psychology and emotion because on paper, it shouldn't be a contest. But Edmonton and BC are way closer than I think a lot of people realize. This is not the same as last year. Edmonton is a much better team than they were last year. BC is not as good a team as they were with the healthy Nathan Rourke BC Lions. And I think I think BC is going to forget that a little bit. They are riding high. They beat Calgary in Calgary, and good for them. They played great. They looked awesome. They are a really good team. I think with the home environment, all the celebrating that's going to be going on there, they can say all they're going to say. They can say all the right things. They can try and be focused. I promise you, the BC Lions are going to overlook the Edmonton Elks. Now, will that be enough for the Elks to steal a victory? We'll see. But it's going to be a tight game coming down to the last few seconds. I think Edmonton pulls it out because they're not a terrible team. They're not good, but they're way closer to the pack than I think most people think.
Yeah, it's a fair trap game. They've got Winnipeg next week. I'm sure the coaching staff is more concerned about that road Winnipeg game, but I would even put a side sub bet on this. I think BC wins. I think they win big. So I like BC by 2 touchdowns here.
That's very bold of you, taking the 7.5 point favorites to win. Very good. The 7.5 point favorites you think will win big?
Yeah, 14.
All right. Let's get to the last game of the week. We've already gone through our picks, and that's Hamilton at Toronto. I think Hamilton wins this one. You have already picked Toronto, so that wraps it up for this one. JB, football is finally here. We're a few days away from being down there at BMO Field. So, it's been a long off season. It's felt like a long preseason, and we're finally going to get at it. I, for one, couldn't be more excited. We'll be down there at Something in the Water Brewing pregame. We'll get there nice and early and get our spots set up for the game itself.
Weather's going to be really nice.
Yeah, everything about it is going to be fantastic.
Again, one final CFL question mark about, I don't know who designs the game times for the Argos. I don't know about this Sunday night game. Nonetheless, it's going to be a good one.
That will just about do it for us on this episode of the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.